Welcome to Inside Voices, a well-read magazine, Between the Pages podcast. I'm Robert Gwaltney, here with my amazing host, Jeffrey Dale Lofton, and we're both so excited to enter into conversation this evening with Mimi Herman. Welcome, Mimi.
Thanks so much, Robert and Jeffrey. I'm so glad to be here.
We're happy to have you. So before we get started, I'm going to share a little bit about you with our listeners. Mimi Herman is a Kennedy Center teaching artist and co-director of Writeaways writing workshops in France, Italy, Ireland, and New Mexico. She serves as vice chair of the board of directors for the Association of Writers and Writing Programs and is taught in the Masters of Education programs at Lesley University, served as a North Carolina Piedmont Laureate, and been an associate editor for Teaching Artist Journal. Since 1990, she's engaged over 25,000 students and teachers with her warm and intuitive teaching style. Her novel, The Kudzu Queen, was selected by the North Carolina Center for the Book for the 2023 Library of Congress Great Reads from Great Places and has been longlisted for the Center for Fiction First Novel Prize and shortlisted for the VCU Cabell First Novelist Award. Jeffrey?
Mimi, we're so glad to have you here. It's always a pleasure to talk with you and to talk with you about your beautiful debut novel, The Kudzu Queen. So there's a little figure right here. I think that's Maddie. Where did you find Maddie and her story?
Oh, so Maddie, I want to say Maddie's been living inside me for a long time, but the story came in a funny way. I was in the downtown Durham, North Carolina Public Library. That tells you how much of a nerd I am. And I was hanging around on the microfiche. So for those people who are too young to know what a microfiche is, it's this big machine. It's kind of like a big magnifying glass because it magnifies these tiny little photos of newspapers and books and magazines. And for some reason, I was roaming around on the microfiche and I came across this really strange story about men who traveled the South in like the 30s and 40s promoting kudzu. Well, I grew up in the South, and nobody who grew up in the South could imagine that you would actually promote kudzu, that you would have kudzu festivals and Kudzu Queen beauty pageants. You got to be crazy to do that. So when I don't understand something, I write fiction to figure it out. So that's the first part of it. And the second part is I was a little bit of a wild teenager. I know, shocking, right? And since then, I've done a lot of thinking about 14 and 15-year-old girls. And I think there's a quality that a lot of them have where they're trying out their sexuality. And they're trying out sometimes on boys their age and sometimes on grown men. And sometimes they get things they weren't looking for. And so I wanted to explore that, not in a good or bad way, not in a Me Too way, but in a, how does that work? What do the girls do? What happens when grown men respond? Just how does that all work? And so Maddie just started trying all this stuff out. And it's often girls who don't think they're attractive at all. So it's like, wow, I'm 15 and this 30-year-old man thinks I'm pretty. This is kind of magic. How do I keep that magic going?
Yeah. And you know, you in this story, you've created a very charismatic shyster. And this is the 1940s, early 1940s.
Yep.
It seems like there's been a resurgence of these kinds of characters over the last several years. How is a story from 80 something years ago a comment on today? And I mean, you said you didn't want it to be a Me Too story. How is this story a comment on today, and what makes Mr. Cullowhee timeless?
I think as a species, we're always looking for the quick fix. You know, we always want somebody who's going to solve all our problems magically, who's going to make us feel beautiful, who's going to make us rich. I mean, think about all the writers who were like, I'm going to get AI to write my book, and then I don't have to spend years writing and revising the thing. I'll just tell AI what to do. So we're always looking for something or someone to solve all our problems for us. I would like someone, I don't want a person to do it, but I would like magic to clean my house without me looking. And I would like, and so if somebody came along and said, I've got this magic, it'll clean your house in 5 minutes. You don't have to worry about like having someone else go through all your dirty stuff. You know, you don't have to feel guilty. It won't be expensive. I'd probably take them up on it, even if it sounded like it was kind of a con. And so I think there's this way that we're always looking for a quick fix. And I think we have this really weird combination right now where there's a lot of people out there that are really unhappy. And then we've got the combination of social media and reality TV, where somebody can be famous just for being famous. And somebody can make promises and somebody can tell you they're going to solve all your problems. Well, the truth is we've always had problems. And where there are problems, people will crop up willing to solve them for whatever you're willing to give them. And I think it feels particularly acute right now, but it's always been true.
I want to take a step back for a second. So not everyone might know what kudzu is. So I grew up in Southwest Georgia, a small town called Cairo in Grady County. Of course, I know kudzu.
Cool.
Talk a little bit about kudzu, and from your understanding, does it possess any redeeming qualities?
Well, I'll answer the second part first. Yes, it does. In Japan, it is highly prized. It does almost everything I say it does in the book. So you can make flour out of the roots. You can make jelly out of the kudzu flowers, which are this beautiful purple, like light purple. You can feed your animals. Does it or doesn't it prevent erosion? That's a good question. But so kudzu, I tell people, think of ivy that wants to eat you. Okay. It's like this really gorgeous plant that climbs everything and takes it over and pulls it down. So it takes over trees and telephone poles and houses. And, if you leave your tractor in the field too long, it's going to take that over. But it does these great things. So we brought it over intentionally. We brought it over for the World's Fair in 1896. And then the government got the great idea that it was going to solve all our problems. So after the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression, plant that grows 12 inches a night or a day, that seemed like a pretty good deal. So unfortunately, it took over the South. It's been called the plant that ate the South.
Yeah.
And it has.
Yeah.
It has.
But for anybody who's around now, it doesn't seem like something you'd want. But at that time, it seemed really great. The government was paying farmers to plant it. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. And it is luscious. I mean, it looks so gorgeous.
Yeah.
Everything it covers seems, especially from a distance, it seems so soft, and you just want to go up and touch it and brush it. There's no clue of what's underneath and what it's doing, the destructive force of it, which is kind of beautifully symbolic of what's going on in this book too. Getting back to that sort of shyster kind of theme.
I love the word shyster. It's not a word we hear a lot much anymore.
Yeah.
Shyster.
Yeah, shyster. Yeah, I mean, I didn't set out to make a symbol. I just wanted to write about kudzu, but I was driving by some kudzu the other day and I thought, oh, it's so pretty. It's so pretty, even knowing everything I know about it, how damaging it is. And I think that's true of shysters. So pretty.
So pretty.
Yeah, all is not what it seems in Southern fiction with elements of the Gothic.
Yep.
Yeah, on the surface. Pretty on the outside.
Yeah.
I was struck when you were talking about, a 14, 15-year-old girl that, and I think all of our works, they are about young people. And I'm interested to know why that time of life, that sort of transition from child to not adult, but older child. Why is that so? You talked about it a little bit, but why is it such an interesting time for writers to explore in their work?
Well, you can plant in red clay or you can plant in deep, rich soil full of worms. And adolescence is deep, rich soil full of worms. There is so much change happening. There is so much potential. All the emotions are right there on the surface. All those hormones, everything's happening at once. And so, I don't know, sometimes I think grownups are boring, and kids are much more interesting. And adolescence is where it's really popping. I taught some young people and adolescents on Zoom through COVID. And it was a great time to teach because I had to be really creative to stay ahead of them. But up until that time, the most creative I've ever been was when I was 14 or 15. I mean, I was dancing, I was acting, I was writing, I was playing music, I was doing all this stuff. I was so alive. And the older you get, the more responsible you get. And I don't like to say we're deadened, but I think there's something about that age that everything's possible. And if you're a writer, that's pretty exciting because you've got a lot to play with. You've got that rich soil to grow in. Can you tell I've been gardening a lot lately?
Right.
It's the time of year.
Yeah.
This is time of year. Within the book, there's this concept of rings, as in like the rings of a tree of life inside us. And you've got Maddie, who is young. And then you have the older character. There's this sense of, really no matter how old you are chronologically, our younger selves remain alive inside and present somehow within us. I think you touched on that just a few moments ago when you were talking about how young protagonists can be so much more interesting in that you have this there's still this robust hopefulness and this childhood possibility that is still within them. You want to touch a little bit more on this concept of rings?
Yeah, I've always thought that we were like trees and that we just keep growing outward and having more and more rings. And, of course, the widest rings are from the richest seasons where there's lots of sunlight and there's lots of rain. And then the narrow rings in a tree are from those cold, dry seasons. And so for me, for me personally, that age was a really rich season, as I've been saying. And I think two things can happen with an older person and a younger person. One is that that vibrancy, that richness is really attractive to someone who feels older and burdened by responsibility. But I think the other thing is that the 15-year-old ring in a grown-up person is drawn to the 15-year-old ring in this younger person.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess there's this sort of echo calling to echo in a way, I suppose.
Yeah.
You have that connection.
So beautiful. It's dangerous, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, it is lovely.
Yeah.
So your character Maddie, there's this sort of, coming of age, this sexual awakening. There's this attraction to this older man. Was there anything when you were writing that? Did you just go for it? Was there anything in this current very politically correct, sensitive climate that we're in that ever gave you pause to help you? Did you ever think I need to pull this back a little?
Not while I was writing it. A lot of the stuff between Maddie and Mr. Cully, the Kudzu King, I wrote before movement. So I was revising it, but I try to keep the censor out of the writing room. And so I feel like if I am writing as honestly as I can, then that's the best that I can do. And so that means paying attention to every moment. I remember writing a short story when I was in college, and I was trying to write about what it feels like to almost run into somebody. And so I ran at my door, not my dorm room, I ran at the wall of my bedroom and stopped just before I hit it to see what part of me pulled back first. And so when I'm writing, I'm always trying to think, well, what does that moment feel like? What does that moment feel like? And how do I have that come across? And it's not that it makes me bulletproof as a writer, but it makes me able to stand by what I've written without feeling like I should have written it differently.
That think
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Mimi, it makes me think of Aunt Mary's house, the abandoned house. And Maddie is really the only person who goes in there, and it's a place where she explores. She thinks about the world around her, her future, her inner thoughts, the changes going on in her life and in herself. And what you just said struck me as you were doing kind of what Maddie does, exploring this place of escape where anything is a possibility. Will you talk a little bit more about this impulse to create this world where Maddie goes alone to escape the world outside?
Yeah, so Aunt Mary's House changed over time for me as a writer. When I first started writing it, I just needed a place where Maddie and her little brother Joey could plant some kudzu without anybody noticing. So, you want to do that. You pick a place where they're allowed to go, but where, the person who owned the house was so mean that, they're waiting until the meanness kind of dies down a little bit after she's died. But the more time Maddie spent in Aunt Mary's house, the more Aunt Mary became a confidant, and the more it became a place where Maddie could be alone. She's not great at being alone, which is funny because I was a really shy, solitary kid, and I still, I feel like somebody once said that they were a well-socialized introvert. I feel like that's what I am. I need a lot of time alone. Maddie doesn't seem to need it, but when she gets it, it's what allows her to think things through a little bit better. And then on the other hand, Maddie is alone in a house, and that could be dangerous.
Hmm.
You were talking a little bit about, when you were younger, writing a story and almost running into someone and the step. I sort of call that, I don't know, I consider myself to be a method writer. It's sort of like method acting, you know,
Yes.
yeah, where you really have to find the truth on the page, you really have to dig in deep, and you do sort of have to imagine, you have to live, and you have to embody the character. At least that's how I feel I have to approach writing, and especially the protagonist when I'm working on a story. Is that sort of how you?
Yeah, I love that. So when I'm teaching writing, um, I don't believe in saying anything to a student that makes them want to go cry in the bathroom. I want to send them back into the writing, not into the bathroom to cry because I've hurt their feelings. And so if somebody says to you, "Oh, you just wrote a cliche," then I'm like, "Oh, great, I'm a terrible writer." But if somebody says, "You were writing so fast that you dropped in a cliche as a placeholder, so dig here," it's a marker that says dig here. So I love digging deep because to me, writing is all about continuing to dig, going beyond the obvious, the cliche, the way we always say things, to really understand it. And that involves using our senses. What does somebody smell or see or feel or hear or taste in that moment? And when is knowing what someone smells going to give us more insight into their emotional life than talking about their emotions?
Yeah, exactly. It's the showing and the not telling, when the showing and not telling is appropriate.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, Maybe the Kudzu Queen has received a great deal of critical praise. The latest being the shortlisted for the VCU Cabell Prize, I think is the prize. How has how's all this great reception from reviewers and readers and awards programs and fellow writers meant to you? What has it meant to you?
It's transformed my life. It's absolutely amazing. I've been writing for decades, many, many decades, and getting things published, getting collections of poetry published, and poems and stories, and a nonfiction book. But this is different. I think of writing as a gift to the reader. So I'm not writing for me. I'm writing because I love writing, but I'm not writing because I need to get my own tortured soul out on paper. I'm writing because I want people to be able to read things and go, "Oh, that's how I felt, but I never saw it that way," or to fall in love with characters. And you always hope that your book is going to be seen and valued and loved. But I'd go into a library and I think there are thousands of books in this library that nobody's read in decades. Why is anybody going to want to read mine? And so to have people reading it and writing to me and telling me that they love it, and to have this kind of recognition, I thought I was giving a gift. I'm the one getting the gift. It's such a gift to me, and it's changed the way that I see myself. I didn't know it was possible.
What would you say, Mimi, has surprised you most about this debut journey of yours? When you were envisioning and dreaming and wondering what it would be like, what has surprised you most?
I think how passionate people are about the characters and how fierce. And it's not always the same characters. You know, like when I first started doing this, somebody said, well, you want to know my favorite character? It's Aunt Mary. I liked Aunt Mary, you know, but it's how impassioned people are, as if these were real people living in their lives. And I never wanted this to be a book that was just for women. I wanted it for men too. And so one of the things that I loved is that some of the emails and notes and messages that I got early on were from men who would send me play-by-plays. I'm on chapter 2 and this has just happened. I'm on chapter 12. Don't interrupt me. I'm reading. And I love that it's a book that is accessible to so many people, and that they've made it their own. People have taken this book into their hearts, and that means the world to me.
So, you and your partner in life, John Ewell, are both writers as well as teachers. Talk a little bit about your lives together as writers and teachers.
It's a great life. It's pretty amazing. I'm not sure that every couple of writers gets along as well as we do, but we do. We're not at all competitive with one another. We're really supportive of each other, but we're pretty fierce editors of each other. You know, when one of us is ready to be edited, the other one will dig in, as we were saying. And I love teaching with John. We had a friend years ago who said, you know, I've studied with you, I've studied with John. I would love for you two to teach together. And I have a friend who has a castle in France. What do you think? Do you want to go? So we were like, okay, twist my arm. That sounds great. And we went, and it was so much fun, you know, eating French food, drinking French wine, teaching people writing, that on the plane back, we're like, okay, what are we going to call this? Writeaways. We're going to call it Writeaways because you write in your way. And, you know, what's a good tagline? Like, why write at home when you can write in a castle? And it just kept growing. Like somebody would say, well, you know, I love the one in France, but if you did one in Italy, I'd go. Or if you did one in Ireland, I'd go. And so when enough people said they wanted Italy or Ireland, we built those. And it has been such a joy. It's a workshop retreat. So it's kind of retreat in the morning and the workshop in the afternoon, week long, all food and board included. It's great. And it's a community of people who are all trying to help each other's writing be what it wants to be when it grows up. People from brand new writers to published authors. And I don't know why the magic works, but it does. It's really special. And I love doing it, John. Sorry.
Having a writing community is so important. Of course, John is an integral part of your writing community. Talk a little bit about what your writing community looks like and the role that it plays in your life as a writer.
I am so lucky because I have several writing communities. So one of my big ones was that I went to Warren Wilson MFA program. And we love the program so much that we created an annual conference where we get together and have readings and workshops and classes and lectures and killer dances. And so if I need a reader, there's a dozen people I can go to and say, can we exchange manuscripts? And I trust their judgment. I went to the first conference that I've been to in years last summer and was stunned at the quality of writing and the integrity of the writing. So that's one community. Other things, North Carolina is such an amazing writing community. Everybody is so supportive of everyone else. I just feel really blessed to have these communities. We have the North Carolina Writers Network, which is wonderful. We have a number of fabulous undergraduate and MFA programs, but we just have good human beings as fellow writers.
It's wonderful. It's important. It's important to have community.
Yeah, and then there's the community that I've met since the book came out. I mean, Jeffrey has been such a gift to me as a friend, as a colleague, as a peer, and as someone that I can admire everything that he's doing in the world. And now you in my life too. I pretty much lucked out.
Well, thank you. Well, I am proud to be part of your community.
I am too. I am too. And yours, Robert. I'm glad to be part of yours too.
So one of the things, you know, so we spent so many, and we spoke prior to us recording, talked about the years that we had been writing, the culminate, because all three of us are debut novelists.
Right.
We all have that in common, you know, and you write, and one of the things um, that you have to do when a book's coming out is talk about your work, your life as a writer and your process. And that's something that I had never done before. I know how I do what I do, but I really don't know how to tell other people how I do what I do. So it was a quick learning curve for me trying to figure out how to tell my story as a writer and how to talk about my book and my writing life. That was what did you have to learn? Um, what competencies did you have to improve upon that you weren't quite so secure about when you were making your way out into the world with the Kudzu Queen?
That's a good question. So there's certain things that my other work kind of accidentally prepared me for. So I've been a teaching artist and a writer in the schools for many years. And so I'm used to going into a room where people don't know me, they don't like what I have to offer, and I have to win them over. And so that hasn't really happened, with the Kudzu Queen, but I'm used to going into a room with a bunch of strangers and charming them. That's what I do. So that was pretty easy, and I love giving readings. I think what's been hardest for me, and this is a little weird, is podcasts. Not the video where I can see your face, but trying to answer questions when I don't see a face.
Mm.
And that's really challenging for me. And also just when I'm in a bookstore or giving a reading and I have a Q&A afterwards, I'm really relaxed. But when I'm being recorded, I always think, oh, why did I say that? I wish I'd said that differently. Oh my gosh, I'm so awkward. So yeah, I would say that has absolutely been the hardest part for me.
Jeffrey, what about you? What would you say was the most challenging part of you getting making your way out into the world with your book, Red Clay Susie?
Well, like Mimi, I'm a very I guess sociable introvert, but it's difficult. I need a lot of time alone. And I was, getting up in front of people is it's a challenge. I enjoy it once I'm there and with people because people are so lovely and make you feel so welcome, but it takes a lot of energy to be in front of people and to be on. And so that was something that I was concerned about. Will I be able to rise to the challenge consistently? And it's something I've gotten used to doing, but I was certainly not confident about it early on. I think that's what it was for me.
Well, I was with you very early on at some of your earliest events, and you know what? You did a beautiful job from the get-go.
No, you were certainly Robert has been a treasure from early on. I reached out to him before my book came out and I said, "You don't know me, but," and he wrote back to me very quickly, and we've been fast friends ever since. What about you, Robert? What was the difficult part for you?
Well, I think that writing a book and talking about how to write a book are two totally different skill sets, and especially if you're not a teacher. I don't work in the realm of teaching. Again, I sort of know what I know, and it works for me, but I'm not quite sure I'm confident enough to tell other people how I go about doing it. I think that was challenging. Um, I think that once I realized that when engaging in these sorts of interviews with other authors or talking with readers, that no one knows me better than I do. So there really are no wrong answers. So once I figured that out, I had this horrible fear of just sounding stupid. That there was perhaps nothing that I might say that might be of any interest to anyone, right? And I found that when people do take the time to come see you, they really are engaged and they want to hear and learn a little bit about you and about the book. So people are lovely and they've made that very much easier for me than I had anticipated. So I think that, battling insecurity and just coming off stupid is something that I was very fearful of from the very beginning.
I think that what we fear the most is what never comes to be.
Mhm.
Right. Well, I think that because we were so passionate about what we do and we care so deeply for what we do, we worry about it. We worry about all aspects of it, the quality of the writing and how we present ourselves to the world. Now not only do you have to write a good book, but people also expect authors to be personalities. We have to have these social media accounts and people want to know and engage. And it really is a strange terrain where we have to traverse trying to get a book out into the world, I think.
Yeah.
I think you're both very good at getting out there. And Mimi, for you, I noticed you were with so many other authors at a reunion, not a reunion, a celebration of Regal House's 10th year, your publisher. And so, will you tell us about that
Yeah.
part of your community? They were even featured in Publishers Weekly recently, I think. Tell us about
Yeah. Yeah. They were on the
maybe.
cover of Publishers Week. It was so great. Oh, what an amazing press. So Janie Royal, who is the founding editor and publisher, and Pam Van Dyke, who is the managing editor, are this amazing team. And Janie is the visionary. She's like, let's do it big, let's do it long, let's do it fabulous. And Pam's like, okay, we're going to do it this way, and we're going to take on manageable things. So they're the perfect team. They're really great friends. And they had this weekend to celebrate their 10th anniversary as a press. I feel like every season this press is getting better and better known. It's kind of amazing to me. And part of it is it's not just a press. Their vision was to create a community. So they have, Facebook page where we talk to each other and send things to each other. They had this event where all these people that we'd only met on social media got to hang out and have panel discussions and readings and cocktail parties. And there's nothing that'll loosen you up faster than a cocktail party, right? Unless you're really nervous at parties, which I am. But at any rate, it was wonderful to see these people whose books we'd read, who we met on social media, and to see Janie and Pam glowing in the company of, I want to say it was like 40 to 45 writers who came from all over the country to celebrate. And so it's really solid. They've got a podcast where they feature us. They ask us to write little features about bookstores we love. You know what I love about Regal House? It is the press of the good literary citizen.
Mm.
It is all about being a good literary citizen in this world of writing. So it's not about backbiting or competition. It's about how can we support one another, and it really works.
I love that. And I think, Jeffrey and I really subscribe to that same philosophy. I mean, we both have talked about this frequently. We believe there's room for everyone at the table. And, collectively we are stronger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that in how both of you are in the world. It's just amazing to me to see how when I read about you, when I'm with Jeffrey, when I'm hopefully with you in the future, everybody around you feels safer. Even now, I feel safer.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad. We're happy to hear that. I'm glad that you feel that you're in good hands, and that's the environment really that's the environment that I want to live in. That's the place that I want to. I spoke recently at the Red Clay Writers Conference that's put on by the Georgia Writers Association, and I tell folks this story when I was my first day of first grade. My mom and my granny Louise took me to Southside Elementary School to go into Miss Debbie Williams' first grade class, and I was really nervous. And my granny Louise sort of looked into the room and she came back out and she said, find the smart people in the room and sit next to them. And I really didn't understand at that time exactly what she meant, but I've always remembered that moment. And I always say that I never want to be the most talented or the smartest person in a room because that's a room that I'm not going to grow in. So, competition, I don't understand it. I think we all should celebrate everyone's successes. And, I want to be motivated to be my best self. So I don't want to be in a room full of Roberts.
I do.
Like fun for the
Well,
rest
come
of
on.
us.
So I
Um,
love that. Well, so we're getting close to the end of our time together, Mimi, but talk a little bit about what's on the horizon for you.
Well, when I have time, which I'm trying to make more and more of, I'm working on the next book, which I'm really excited about. It's set in Ireland in the mid 80s, which is a time when I lived there. And it features a missing child of someone who's in the IRA and a drag queen named Holly Unlikely.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's wonderful. Well, Mimi, we wish you every success. Congratulations on the Kudzu Queen. It's been lovely spending time with you.
Oh, Robert and Jeffrey, thank you so much. What a joy it's been to talk with you. Thank you.
And I look forward to meeting you in person one day soon.
Same here. Thank
So,
you.
so gentle listeners, until next time, for Inside Voices, I'm Robert Gwaltney.
And I'm Jeffrey Dale Lofton. And remember, to be creative is to be courageous. Thanks for joining us.